Now looking for a second.
Second.
Discussion. Comments? In favor?
Aye.
We have an approved agenda. I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Question, corrections,
Also.
problems? Minutes. Public participation. Now, I'm not going to read this unless someone is here to present from the public. Ally, is there anyone?
No.
And otherwise, it's all us. So, okay, so we move on. School reports, Torrington Vogel Wetlands. Hey, that's
Yes, that's us. So Andrew, thank you for supporting Vogel Wetmore and Torrington, and thanks to the administration from Vogel Wetmore and Torrington for being here tonight to share with us just some student achievement updates. We're not going to go through the whole full school report, just the student achievement updates. So what we'll have is fall, winter, and then maybe later on, probably or late summer, we'll be able to give you the spring. So I don't know how you want to start. Do you have a
Sure. So we're very excited to share with you some updates on initiatives that we have begun working on at our two K-3 schools. We're very excited about how our students are doing in the areas that we are going to present on this evening. So without further ado, I turn it over to my colleagues at Torrington and Vogel.
So we do a lot together collaboratively since we've had sister schools. I think we told you guys last time we're the twins. So the only two K-3 schools. So we collaborate often as an administrative team and with Andrew to make decisions about how to move students forward. And this year is no different from that. When we received the students in September, we were quick to take a look at our data and make decisions based on that data, even different from what we had planned over the summer, so that we could move student achievement forward. So in between each slide, we figured you'd like to see kids more than hear us talk. So you'll see some highlights from our students. This is just a carryover of the mission and vision statements that you see on our school improvement plans and from Torrington Public Schools. More pictures of our lovely kiddos and some of the things that you'll hear about today. Student-centered coaching, our leave home visits and our attendance teams, some opportunities for students to improve with social emotional learning like lunch bunch, our increased ability to reach our EL needs based on the staffing. And then we've done some amazing things through foundations, which is our phonics and phonemic awareness instruction. Here's our demographics.
So I'm sure you're familiar with our demographics, but you can see, especially looking at changes, I think which is the most interesting thing to look at. On total number of students, you can see it's probably one of the biggest areas where the change were between the two schools down almost 90 kids over the last 3 years. Prediction that will be going up, but I'm not the expert on school enrollment, but I think that COVID made parents hesitant to send their kids to school to start kindergarten if they could hold them off a little longer. So I'm hopeful that we'll have more coming. And then as far as when you look at the demographic makeup, if you look at the ethnicity, you can see some small changes, only over 3 years, but our Hispanic and Latino have gone up just a little bit over the 3 years, and but those are numbers, not percentages. So they've gone up while our numbers have gone down. So the percentages have gone up even a little bit more. And then our English language learners, you can see on the bottom, really this kind of the same story, that those numbers have been climbing, and we're happy to have the supports that we need to support those students, while our students with disabilities have been going down a little bit. So we all know who we can attribute that to. At least partly to Laura, but really to our hard work that we've been doing at the school level too. So our special ed supervisors that are really in there making sure that the students that need special ed services get it, and that those that don't are getting additional services. And I'm also hopeful that number will continue to drop as long as our levels of intervention stay where they are, because that's really going to make a big difference.
more healthy pictures of the good work that's happening in our schools. This slide talks about some of the initiatives that we've taken on and that you'll find in our school improvement plan, a focus on the foundational literacy skills based on the science of reading. So this year we kind of did an overhaul or we're shifting because there are some legislative changes that are happening that will impact us. So due to those changes in reading instruction, we decided to make some changes right away instead of wait for programs and things to be happening at the state. We had foundations for a while, but we've adjusted how we do foundations, and we started to teach the staff about the science of reading and how to really impact students with instructional strategies. Student-centered coaching, we now each have 2 coaches, which is a great benefit having as many teachers as we have within our building, just classroom teachers, as well as other teachers. Coaches are able to do coaching cycles with teaching staff. And I heard at the budget meeting, some people were confused as the role of a coach. So just to kind of clarify a little bit more, what coaches typically do is they meet with a teacher, they look at their student data, they decide based on student data what the need is for that classroom and those students, and then they create a coaching cycle around that need. And they meet with the teacher and the class. They do some modeling, some co-teaching, some listening in, some observing. They even work with the students, assess the students, and then by the end of the cycle, they collect post data based on the impact of that cycle and the focus of the cycle. So we've seen huge gains within each coaching cycle when teachers are meeting with coaches. And our focus primarily has been on literacy and the foundational skills.
On top of that, they meet at grade level meetings each week with grade level teams, so that it's not just the teachers that they're working with in coaching cycles that they're helping all of the time, so that they're really looking at data with whole grade levels. They're looking at data with us as administrators and making suggestions that are maybe not individual teacher specific. And they are doing that, but they're also doing it grade level wise, where we're looking at different changes that we need to make to the curriculum maps or to what's coming next, or to identify students that are either in a class that's not being coached or that might need to work with an interventionist. They do some of that work as well. So it's more than just that. That's although the biggest piece.
And if I may add on to that as well, I've set up a system where bi-weekly the coaches and administratives meet with me so that we can ensure that there's alignment between what our district goals are and that those funnel down into our schools. And it also helps to ensure that what's happening at Vogel is also happening at Torrington while being responsive to the individual needs of that school. So we found that to be very effective. And also the coaches meet regularly with just their administrators to take what has happened in those discussions and think about how are we going to implement these in each of our sites. So I think we found that collaboration to be very successful this year in having that system and that structure built.
The next one listed here is intervention support and our MTSS process. We've kind of been in this process for a while, but last year having minimal supports as far as intervention goes because interventionists became classroom teachers. This year we're kind of back to where we were when we had a full intervention team. So now with the intervention team in place, each school has a day where they run what's called student success team meetings. They meet on individual students. They look at student data. Those meetings can be about academic achievement, behavior, and the right individuals get invited to that meeting. It's similar to a PPT or a 504, but it's a student that doesn't receive any of those services or may also receive those services, but it's around an area of concern or a goal. And the interventionist comes and talks about what they're doing with the student. If it's a student who receives EL services, that person comes so that we're all working towards a similar goal in the same way. If you have several people supporting a kid in 5 different ways, you end up confusing a student. So this process has really helped us move students forward.
And they will leave those meetings generally with a SMART goal, with a goal for that particular child. Usually it's reading or math, sometimes behavior as well, but they leave that with measurable goals that they can work on, sometimes at the teacher classroom level, and sometimes that will kick up to additional supports of intervention, but not always.
About every 3 weeks, I have the opportunity to meet with the interventionists and the administrators so that we can build a cohesive and coherent plan that's based on the work that began a few years ago when Maureen stepped into the position of Director of Intervention across a district. We're really building upon that and making sure it works seamlessly for the for the elementary. Also, on our professional development days, we've been really thinking about how do we really focus in on what students need most, and then build a comprehensive plan for each individual student to address their particular needs. So we have found that that collaboration, again, from the district and at the school level, has been very effective.
The next one you see there is English learner support. We have a bigger team supporting our students than we've had in the past. At Torrington, with 99 students identified for EL supports, we have 3 certified staff members, as well as 3 paraprofessionals and tutors supporting those students each day. And that higher level of support has helped us really meet the needs of those students. And really, with Joanne in place, Joanne Creedon, they have a leader to kind of look to make sure they're cohesive across the district as well. And I brought some information because I've heard Gary say at one point, are we over-identifying EL students? So just as like a sound bite, we have 99, it's 98, we just lost one through transfer. So we have 98 EL students in Torrington right now, 158 families speak a different language. So they do go through a screening process before they get identified as needing EL services.
Yeah, the numbers we were given were like 495. We got it, somebody handed something out that had English learners at 400, wasn't that the number, 495?
That might be district-wide. My number is 99.
District
Right,
wide?
that would make sense, Gary, if she's got
Oh, it doesn't have
100,
middle school,
right?
that's right, doesn't have.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
So for me, I have 99 students that are receiving that service, but when they fill out their language survey as they register, if they answer yes to any one of those questions, they go to a screening. And there's 158 families that answered yes. So that tells you that 60 families didn't qualify.
Okay,
And
that's
that's
good
just case
information.
rate.
Or
That's good.
opted not to
Right.
participate.
That's good information to have. That's what we need, that kind of information.
It's 85.
It tells the story.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does.
The next one listed here is mental health support staff. We now have behavior interventionists that we share across sister schools. We have a BCBA that we share district-wide, and we have an RBT, as well as our school psychologist and school social worker. And that is the behavior team that helps the administrative team support students. They also attend MTSS or SST meetings. They set behavior strategies in place. They meet with teachers. They've offered trainings. They've done whole staff meetings where they're training staff on different opportunities. They've done some trainings with the paraprofessionals on PD days, and all of that has really helped even our tier 1 behavior supports and classroom teachers be able to identify a concern and have some strategies that they can try first. And then if those don't work, they have a team of supports they can go to look and get more information or different strategies. Those are all data-driven as well. We collect data on behaviors, just like we collect data on achievement. So you'll see some of that later on in the presentation. And without the mental health support staff, we would not be able to be instructional leaders. So that's a huge change for us.
One other thing that they do that sometimes is similar to what the instructional coaches do around behavior. So they'll go into classrooms and model some of this work with teachers. If they're helping to put a new plan in place, they may go in the first day, model it, show them how to use it with a student, and then kind of give the teacher that support. It's not the same level of intensity as an instructional coach, but they'll go in and make sure things get started in a strong way.
The next one you see here is attendance team and LEAP. Each school has an attendance team that meets regularly and talks about students of concern or at risk or already chronically absent. And the LEAP team is associated with the grant that was received over the summer. And there are home visits that are happening, invitations to even Zoom. They slowed down over the winter, obviously due to COVID and people not just feeling comfortable going into the homes, but we're picking up again. We've tiered our students into different categories based on the number of absences they are at this time of year, and invited them again for spring home visits. So we're hoping that will pick right back up.
I'll take the next two. So we've had a lot of, every week, grade levels get to meet together, both with the administrators and the coaches, to talk about curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So it was a great time to talk about the connection between those three and what's going to be happening in their classrooms. That has been very positive. Also, during that time, teachers have been looking at student data. Performance Matters has been instrumental in these conversations. So last year we brought that on board in this district. Maureen and I built the system, and this year we're using it and we're really maximizing its capabilities. It has become a data warehouse where we are storing a lot of student data, and it's been very powerful to see across an entire student's profile, not only their academic performance, but also their behavior and their absences, et cetera, to try to get a more complete picture of who a student is and what kind of supports we may be needing to provide. So again, we thank you for allowing us to bring that on board in our district, because it has been very powerful. And I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment further on those two items.
I think it's also, students are actually able to take tests within Performance Matters. So we've created simulation tests to prepare us for Smarter Balance. So they've been doing IADs, which are aligned to the tests that they have to take for the state at the end of the year. And it's been helpful because students are getting to practice online testing without actually having the high stakes of the state testing, and then review that work with their teacher.
That's
And
good.
that collaborative planning time is just so key for the work that our coaches are doing with grade levels and that we're doing with our grade level teams. And really, there's so much that we could not do if we didn't have that time weekly. So that's something that we worked really hard to make sure fit into our schedules, and that we'll do our best to continue going forward.
If I may lead on this next slide, typically what we share with this group is the percentage of students at proficiency. Those are meeting a particular benchmark, a particular standard that we have at a particular time period, how many students are meeting that. But in addition to just reporting on that, we're also reporting on growth. Because what we know from both the state and other measures that we have is that we want to ensure every student, no matter what level of proficiency that they are at, every student is growing at a rate that is typical for where they are in their development. So we're also now reporting on growth target. And I know Kelly and Peter are going to elaborate a little bit more on that as well as we go through this data.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're looking here, STAR we have a reading and a math version of STAR. It's an online based test that's nationally normed. And so students will take it, they don't start taking it to second grade. That's why you don't see kindergarten and first grade data, because it begins in second grade. And we have our fall percentages and the increase in winter that occurred. But the important part is the student growth percentage. So if you're looking at that, it's norm reference, and it lets you know whether students are making, we get a nice little pie chart, and it will tell you whether a student, even if a student is low performing, whether they made high growth, or if a student's high performing, whether they made low growth. So you want all of your students to make high growth, whether they started off the year on grade level or whether they started off the year below grade level. And that's the conversations that we have with teachers during our mid-year meetings. We have this data in front of us. We have something called a summary of effectiveness report that comes from one of our other tests. And we also have a report from STAR that puts students in buckets in almost like a quadrant. And if they're up in the right quadrant, then they're a high performing student that's made high growth. If they are in the bottom right quadrant, they're a low performing student that's made high growth. If they're on the left-hand side, they made low growth, whether they're high performing or low performing. So those are the conversations that we're having. What about this kid over here? Why didn't he make enough growth? What happened here where this child made so much more growth? That's what we talk about during our mid-year meetings. That's the kind of data that we're talking about to find out what we're going to do from now to the end of the year to move students.
And so a quick summary of this data, while we may not have the percentage of students where we would like at proficiency, we can see just about half of our students are making their expected level of growth. So that gives us really great hope that by the end of the year, and some of the things that we began in the winter and are going to do until June, we'll see all of those numbers increase. Next slide, please, Ali.
We're wonderful students. On the left is our They're similar to PBIS Awesome Awards, and I know you guys have something similar at your school where kids can earn school-wide meeting expectations incentives. Based free things like we call it riding the Zamboni. So that little kindergartner got one at the end of the month to ride the Zamboni. The one that looks like they're drinking, they're not. It's we do a fancy lunch for the kids get to put in a ticket. If they get pulled out, they get to pick 7 friends, and Mrs. Austin serves them on a ticket. It's still their school lunch, but they love it. It's, they get a tablecloth, they get balloons, they get, their fancy glasses, and that's actually one of our most popular awards. And on the right there, you'll see pictures of students working together in partner reading and in intervention. This is our DIBELS testing score data. DIBELS is something we do K through 3. And DIBELS is really originally designed as an early indicator of reading difficulties, specifically dyslexia. But we give it to all students. It's a screener. So it lets us know students that are in need of intensive intervention, students that are in need of just minimal supports, and students who are on grade level and can just continue with tier 1 support. And this year, you can imagine that many of our students came up at the beginning of the year needing intensive support, which is why, thank goodness, we had the number of interventionists that we had, because we would have never been able to meet the need. So we started off like within kindergarten. 15% of our kindergartners came in on grade level ready to go. That has a lot to do with COVID. It has a lot to do with pre-K exposure and ability to reach students and have a pre-K experience before they get to kindergarten. And then those scores grew by winter, but not enough. So we revamped kind of what we're doing with regards to those foundational skills that DIBELS is tracking.
These are many of the conversations that Sue Ferguson has shared with you in prior meetings about our new approach to teaching phonics at the K-3
Right, we
level.
don't have the patience to wait for the state to release their list. So we put together our own homegrown program, and we are seeing success. Kids are excited because they feel like they're readers, and it is going to have payoff. I'm convinced. I'd bet my house on it.
Yeah. So this
It
homegrown.
already has. So that.
Yeah, exactly. So
this is the part
It's good. I'm not going to be
I'm,
homeless,
I'm
right?
I'm most excited to talk about today. So what we started with this, and I know we're probably already out of time, but so I'll try to go quickly. But our Torrington Public Schools phonics survey was developed in-house, and it really was designed to measure where our students are K-3, whether they're a 3rd grader and they're at a kindergarten level, or it would be nice if a kindergartner was at 3rd grade level, but we didn't find much of that, which is fine. That shouldn't be. So really what it allowed us to do was within our grade levels, especially 1st and really 2nd and 3rd, allowed us to group our students for the 30 minutes of foundations time, which is really the place where they're developing those basic reading skills into the groups based on the skills that they need to work on. So what is it that this
The very next
survey
skill
showed
they
us?
need.
The very next thing that they need to get to where they need to go to be a strong reader. So the first thing that started trickling out to us after we did this, and it was a lot of work to group all these kids, to test all these kids, to get them all there. But when you see that data, we knew we had to. And so teachers immediately within a week reported that kids are more engaged. There are less behavior issues, and they are already sharing more. They're more confident in their abilities, and they were very excited from the beginning. So just a few of the things that we're able to share data-wise. What I was thinking about a way that I could bring in all of this data to show you, but every student really has their own data. Every group has their own data, and it would have been so much. We would have been here through the weekend. But almost every single 2nd grade student met goal on CBC words. And that was so far from being true at the beginning of this. Almost every student, and I couldn't find one that hadn't made significant progress and had really, where we had set their goals in the area that we had set for growth, I didn't find any that didn't make growth. And it was a tremendous amount of growth for a lot of them. So students, they even progressed. It was interesting to see in areas that we weren't teaching them directly and weren't below where they were either, but were above where they were. So we were kind of, as we were filling in these holes, the future skills that they'd been taught and weren't successful at started to make sense to them. So we're really, that was probably the biggest surprise to me. I hoped for that, but to see it was really fascinating and just encouraging. So we see that evidence every single day in reading also. So when the students are doing their additional reading time, they're reading a novel, they're reading a Geode's book, whatever they're reading in their class, that we're seeing their skills improve there much more quickly than we had before. Our groups are all flexible, so we're re-administering this test when appropriate along the way. And often we don't have to do the whole thing anymore, so we already know where they are all set, and we can just test them and then the next skills down the line. And we're able to group in more kids than I thought are back at grade level now than I would have predicted in, what was it, 6 weeks maybe.
The other thing we can do with the retesting is compress the curriculum, which is the whole acceleration model. So when we're retesting on this phonics survey, we have our pre-data, now we have our mid-data. We're able to say this whole group doesn't need to go every single day through this next unit. They've all got it. We can skip this next unit and go on to the further unit that's where they're falling apart. So it really helps us pick exactly what to teach in that 30 minutes.
And move them up to grade level proficiency at a much faster rate.
Yeah, and I'm willing to bet Sue's house that the double scores are going to show it too.
You got a mortgage on your house?
It's all very, it's very, very
It's
exciting.
very
It really is. It's very exciting. We're so excited about this. And, as they were just saying, it's only been a few weeks. So, I mean, imagine what we're going to be able to do. And I've seen it myself walking around the kids. And Peter, I think you said, behaviors, not as many behavior incidents because the kids feel successful. With anybody who's ever spent time in a classroom as a student or a teacher, right, knows that when you are feeling like you're not getting it, what's the first thing that you do? You draw attention to yourself in another way, right, in a negative way. And we're not seeing so much of a need for that anymore because kids think of themselves as readers. They're scholars. Yeah.
Yeah. We're starting to think about some ways that we can do some similar work with mathematics as well. It's a little trickier with math, but I have some ideas and we've started to talk about it and found some screeners that we can do in math as well. So that we're looking to, won't be exactly the same, but some things that we can do to fill in those math basic
But
foundational
this
skills
is going to
too.
have an impact on the math too, right?
course.
Just because of the language density of math instruction today,
Mhm.
once these reading skills are in place and they're solid, the kids are
Absolutely.
you're gonna see a jump in math too.
Yep, the problem, so if you were to read some of the word problems and things that kids have to solve on smarter balance assessment and those kind of things, if the language skills aren't there, it's almost impossible to solve those problems. Good point.
So chronic absenteeism is something that is a goal as a district. It is
You flew right by my weekly challenge winners. I wanted to mention them. Can you go back one? Sorry. This is something exciting actually that Ms. Pei had started probably about 6 weeks worth or so that we've done, where on our morning announcements, we have a weekly challenge for all of our students. Each grade level has, it's the same theme throughout the grade levels, but each grade level has something different that they're expected to produce and to hand in. And we pick winners each week, and the individual winners, a few per grade level, get a special prize. And last week, for the first time, we decided on this space themed to make some space slime with a grade class from each grade level. And that was our slime making that we had a whole lot of fun in doing, so did the kiddos. Sorry, thank you.
looks like bubbles.
It does look good, but it's clear blue slime, so that's why it looks like bubbles.
It's the best.
Now
Now
we're ready, thank you.
So we do have lots of efforts in place with chronic absenteeism. However, we're still impacted by quarantine and COVID and absences, and rightfully so. Families are keeping their kids home even if they just have a sniffle. So that's impacting our attendance. So we still meet regularly. We still talk about student attendance. We still send letters. We still do home visits. We still contact families and find out what the barriers are to coming to school. But this year, the progress has been not as good as we've seen in the past because of what we have families calling and saying, well, I'm nervous. I don't want to send them. I don't want to get anybody else sick. I'm not sure what it is. And so they're keeping their kids home in a precautionary way more often than they typically do at our age level. And I will say, I don't know how it is at Vogel Wetmore, but since the masks have come off, the stomach bug is here. So, ooh, it's been going around and there's been more absences even now.
We've also had
So,
colds and
Yep.
regular things coming around. so.
yep.
If I could just chime in, we had our Alliance meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we were sharing with them, and they were actually sharing with us too. This is a little bit complicated to understand, but our average daily attendance in all of our schools is around 95% every single day. So we've got 95% of our kids coming to school every single day. But there is a small percentage of our students who are chronically absent. So that's really what that represents. It appears as though our schools are half empty, but that's not the case.
Right.
This first slide is, we did our behavioral data separately because it's not exactly the same. But we use a program called Swiss that's able to track teacher referrals. And what's nice about the program is you can use it for SST, student success team meetings on an individual student, but you can also use it to look at the school and find areas, problem areas that you can meet with your leadership team and kind of fix, if it's always lunchtime, if it's always recess, if it's Mondays and Fridays, whatever the problems are, this data helps us kind of drill down into why the problem's happening. Is it a system issue, not a student issue? So this is Torrington's data. It's a little old. I think gave you like mid-February. So the referrals were going down essentially, and our highest grade level for referrals is kindergarten, which makes sense because that's my biggest grade level. I have 166 kindergartners. And they're little, and they were probably locked in their house since they were 3.
Right, many of those
First
kids,
time out in the
because of
world.
COVID, were not socialized the way that you would expect.
Yeah.
Correct.
We talked about that
Mhm.
early on.
Mhm.
Yep, and mine is similar, and I unfortunately gave you the wrong picture there on the right-hand side, I just noticed. But mine looked very much like Kelly's with the numbers being higher in the lower grades and working their way down. And sometimes bigger kids, bigger problems, but there are less of them. And our kindergartners are, I think, a big part too of why the monthly numbers are dropping. And then mine was about mid-February too, so that that February number is going to go up some.
Couple of questions we have time for. You're done, right? That's so questions.
Yeah. Let me quick.
We have half an hour.
The chronic absenteeism. I know there's a tendency not to hold kids back, but when you have kids who miss, let's say 65 to 85 days, those are the kids who aren't going to know when they get from grade 1 to 2. You can't keep up in grade 2 what they didn't learn in grade 1. How will that be
So
addressed?
the interesting thing, or you might find interesting, I don't know, I do, is we have something called the Lights Retention Scale that we use. That's a tool that we use to look at all the characteristics of a student and see if they're a good candidate for retention. And my gut would probably say the same thing as you, that if they miss a lot of days, they'd be a good candidate for retention. But actually, the research shows the opposite to be true, that if students are missing a lot of days, retaining them is not going to be something that helps them to improve. So we wouldn't retain a student based on
No, I understand that. I meant their ability to keep up, whether it be the reading or the math.
But that's the
Not the
thing.
days.
So really what we need to do is we need to figure out how to get them to come to school more going in the future, give us that opportunity for us to do that intervention, kind of work with them to fill those things in. As you can probably imagine, if you're older than the students in your grade level, the behavior problems, the self-esteem things, all of that kicks up also, but you're right. But to push a student forward that doesn't have the skills that they need does make it harder for them. So that's a factor that I'd consider as well.
And definition of chronic absenteeism, though, by the state is like 4 days in a month, and then
No,
you're
I-
chronically absent.
No,
It doesn't have to be 80,
I was just using it as.
Yeah.
I know my family, this is going back over a decade or so. Some of the kids just were moved forward, and they, by the time they got to high school, they still couldn't read it.
Mhm.
You can't catch up at that point. And they have the issues that they experienced were never showed to school, always feeling inferior, and And that's a lot of kids.
At our level, it's more about the parents. So we are proactive with our incoming kindergarten families. We meet with them. We talk to them about attendance in our orientation and our upcoming readiness fair. There's all kinds of information about attendance and how important it is. Students who are chronically absent in middle and high school, if you look back, are typically chronically absent in kindergarten. So it's this problem that starts at our level and we have to fix it at our level so that it doesn't continue. So we have to have students and families engaged in the process, loving learning, feeling like the school is a part of their community and a place that they feel welcome. So that's the work that we're doing, is really just making them want to be at school. Sometimes it's about them feeling like they're behind. I don't believe at our level that's the typical concern. Most of the time, most of the things we run into are, I don't have a car and we miss the bus, or transportation issues, family issues. I'm sick, so I kept the kids home, or one of the kids is sick, so we all stayed home. So we find out why they're not coming and then chip away at how we can help with that problem. And also I would agree that keeping a student back based on their attendance isn't necessarily, at least where we are as a district, because look at how many kids are not on grade level. If you kept, how many kids would we keep back? So what we're doing is adjusting what we're doing as a building and as a staff to support students and meet them where they are and make sure that we're accelerating them to grade level. Otherwise, you would be retaining 70%
have to
grade
fill
level, right?
But the kid that you're describing, I think, is the kid that needs retention, the one that's, they're working
I
hard,
mean,
they're
the
in
kids that
school, they're
can't come,
struggling.
yeah, and they
Um,
go to fourth grade, but they can't read at third grade level.
Yeah, but if
Those
they're
are
not
kids I'm
special
talking about.
education, then retention is something that, it sounds like you're describing a student that it might be the right.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, especially if they're immature on top of it. That's a factor as well.
And there are children who come up for conversation around that
Mhm.
at every school every year.
Absolutely.
So it's not like it's unheard of. It does.
Mhm.
Other questions? Jessica?
On this sheet, the behavioral referral data page, what type of student behavior would necessitate a referral?
So we ask our teachers to really fill out, it's a very simple checkbox form for just about any kind of behavior, negative behavior. So it could be from not doing the work in class, it goes all the way up to burning the school down. So there's, and everything in between. Hopefully not. Yeah, I didn't get one of those yet. But it's really anything. So it's a disruption to class, aggressive behavior, physical behavior, things like that are on that form. It also, it is arson, or you have a weapon, or you have drugs or alcohol in school. It's the same, pretty much the same form that the high school may use. So we don't have a lot of the knives and
The reason
drugs
why
and
we
things
ask for even minor offenses, and there's a minor and a major at the
Mm.
top, is so that we can collect data that will help us make system decisions. If we only collected physically aggressive events, it's not necessarily a true picture of all the
Right.
behaviors that teachers are dealing with on a daily basis.
And then in our SST meetings that we were talking about, when we have behavior SST meetings, this is a place where we'll go to get data for that. So teachers, if they have a student that they're concerned about, they're usually pretty good about making sure that they get those forms to us so we can have that data in Swiss. And some are hesitant to do it. I took care of the problem. I don't need to fill out a form, but that we want to get that data so we can track even those more minor behaviors. I mean, if I said, Miss Pay, you need to get to work here, that's not going to be a Swiss form. But if you hit Andrew, then I would fill one out. Don't hit
Fair
Andrew. Yeah.
Sue, you had a question?
Just a couple of comments. The individual plans, learning plans or goals that you have with each student, I think is fantastic. I love that. The phonics program, Sue and I have talked about this in the past, and I just think it's great that we're seeing results already. And I'm just excited to see how the end of the year comes along too. And then the performance matters data warehouse. We all love data. I think most of us, as you know, love data. So I'm excited to continue to see that output as well. But great job. Thank you for sharing with us.
Further comments, questions? Fiona?
I have two questions. On the student discipline data, is that tracked by incident or student?
So it's tracked both. So we have, what we're showing you here is the first one is the number of students by month. And then the next one was the number of students, it was the average per day per grade level. But when we look into our data system, we can we can look at it at a whole bunch of different.
We could see it by teacher, we
Yeah.
could see it by space, we could say, oh, was it on the playground, and pull all those.
And the time of day, so we can see that, especially if we're looking at one student, we can say, Johnny, every day, 1:20, what's he doing at 1:20? Because he gets in trouble every day at 1:20, and it's, recess.
Mondays and Fridays are hard for so-and-so.
I guess so. My concern is, I understand that behaviors get better as the year goes on, but it would seem odd that they would get almost 75% better. So do we think there's any resistance in completing these forms?
This
Because
was
they're-
actually collected from me on like February 18th, so it's not all of February.
Mine
Um,
doesn't at all.
Right, but even if you look at the previous month, I mean, because I think like these type of items, and I'm not saying anything against you guys, just I'm not sure, are we positive everyone's filling them out? Because that's how we drive budget decisions.
Yeah, we actually retrained staff, not retrained, we reminded them. Because they've had the training a while back, but I think some people just kind of forget how to fill out the form correctly or when we want a form. So we did do a refresher on that and saw an increase in March because we said, you know, you can't just write every kid up who hits. It's got to be every kid who's doing anything. Otherwise, it's like that didn't happen, right?
Right.
So then the child goes to the next grade level and might be put with other kids who behave similarly because there's no collection of information that that child had any problems because the teacher just did it.
And if you think back to what January looked like, also with the vacation, and then we had the weird snow days and things like that that were going on, and then teachers are like, we just jump in here, so maybe the kids are ready to, there's a lot of factors, but what you're saying might be also true.
You know what, too, though, sorry, but I think also this was an unusual year because that was right around the time where we had the COVID surge.
Right.
And especially at our younger grade levels, we had certain classes who were quarantined 2 and 3 times, the same group of students. So there was a tremendous amount of inconsistency and disruption. I think really that all contributed to it also, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely, but you're right, we want to celebrate this as a win, but to say that like our behaviors are solved.
Right, and I'm not trying
is
to
a
be
reach.
negative,
No,
I'm just
of
saying
course.
it drives a lot of our
Yeah.
decisions, so it's important that we have.
Thank you, we
Good
still
data
we
to
still need
use
behavior
with
support.
that.
Yes.
And I guess my second question is, do you guys track tardiness
Yes.
or just absenteeism?
Tardiness is in the Power School system. Pulling the report is a little tricky. I don't know whose job that is, but tardiness and even early dismissals, because we have some chronic people who do that too. So they take them out of school every day at 3 o'clock instead of staying till 3:35. So we have it on both ends.
So do you guys just procedurally, so when school starts, do we shut the doors and then make the parents come in
We
to
do,
bring the
so-
kids in so that they're actually getting marked tardy?
So once that time comes that drop off is over, the kids have to come through I don't know how you do it, but they have to come through our main office and the secretaries check them in. The parents are supposed to walk in the
So
door.
we
ring the
wanted
buzzer.
2 buses is kind of
Mhm.
an issue because our second wave of buses gets to school 10 minutes after school starts. So I don't feel like it's fair to mark a kid tardy if our buses are just arriving.
Right.
So once
Right.
all the buses are here and unloaded, then kids start getting marked tardy.
But wouldn't that be, I mean, the buses isn't the students' fault that they're tardy?
We don't mark
but
them
if a
tardy if the
parent-
buses.
No, but I'm saying, so why would a parent be allowed to be 10 minutes late because a bus is late?
Because technically half of our kids aren't even in the building. The second wave shows up 10 minutes
I know,
after.
so I
school
guess from my
starts.
point,
Yeah.
that's like setting standard, like we want them to be in school on time, and I think if we're not gonna require them to be school on time, I think that's
Yeah.
problematic down.
I
'Cause it
agree. I
creates
would
patterns.
want all
I
of my
think what's
kids in school
happened,
at
Fiona, honestly, is that especially in Torrington, I think what's happened is because of the amount of traffic that was created and all of that, we were trying to just be considerate because, you know, of the uniqueness of the year with COVID, with the lines of people. We were encouraging parents to transport their children earlier, right? Because we wanted to have social distancing on the buses, and then we had a shortage of bus drivers, and it was just a domino effect of so many things that to then say to parents, well, you've been sitting in line to drop off your child for half an hour, so we're gonna mark your kid late, you know, so we
I mean, I
were,
think we just, at some point, we have to, if that's not the case and there's no one in line, I think
Oh,
that
yes.
we have to hold the parents accountable.
Yes.
But we do, at the high
absolutely.
school, they get marked tardy. If they're out stuck on Winthrop Street in traffic, they get marked
They have
tardy.
to sign in and they're marked tardy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the
There's
parents
10
should be held
buses
to a
that show
higher
up
standard than the
between
high school students.
8:50 and 8:55, and the school day starts at 8:45, so I just don't get that.
Yeah, even when we met recently with the folks from Alliance from the state, we went over all of this and they were actually very complimentary of our willingness to be flexible with families right now who are attempting to get their kids to school. And so, yes, I agree. And I think we all agree. And then going forward, fingers crossed, we're on the tail end of this and we'll get back to where we were pre-COVID and in the fall.
So if we have all these buses, like, I'm sorry, it's the last thing I'm gonna say. I'm gonna go out in the hallway.
And that's not every day either.
But
That's
yeah.
based on road construction and, the coming up Charles Street. I mean, for how many months,
Yeah, I'm just, so if we have 10 buses that are late every day, and then we have all these kids late, and we're supposed to be starting at 8:45, are we not starting instruction at 8:45? I mean, because that could be a half hour we're losing every day, which, maybe there's some things we can do to try to figure out the bus situation.
Yep, and we are, and we have been. And again, it's been a day to day and we've had to be flexible depending on, you get the call, bus 32 is gonna be late and just, we can't.
No, I know, but that should be an odd. We shouldn't have 10 buses being late on a daily basis. Yeah. I mean, not for tonight, but.
Right,
something I
and
think-
again,
a lot of
just to
time.
remind everybody, it is, but we went through the majority of this school year with a shortage of drivers and had to combine routes, remember? So that lengthened the bus routes for everybody and there was really not a whole lot we could do about that.
Right.
It just was what it was.
I should
Next
add that
topic. Nikki, you had your hand up a while ago, and then Jess.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to piggyback on, I think, where Sue was going with the data. I'd love to see, Andrew work with Sue to be able to compile something that we can review at the monthly meetings as part of the Office in Teaching and Learning update, to be inclusive of behaviors and the academic, of all this data you guys have. I think we should be reviewing something monthly. That was it.
Jess?
I was just going to comment on the data as well. And I wonder, and Fiona's question kind of prompted this in my mind, but do we feel like the teachers have enough time during their day to do all of the data collection that we're asking of them? Because the state loves data, we love data, the board asks you guys for this, but obviously it doesn't just come out of the air, right? People have to enter this thoughtfully into a program for it to even be meaningful in any way. And I think that's probably, I guess I'd have that question at all of the levels, but since you guys are here, what do you think? Like, how do you think your teachers would contribute more if they had more time during the day?
Of course they would, but I think this is what a Swiss forms is.
It's a
like. So
checklist.
Yep, the behavior,
Okay.
it's really a
Yep, I have
checklist. The
seen
Swiss
that.
forms are
Thank you.
fairly easy and quick. Is that what you're specifically asking about? is
Well,
Swiss?
just I mean, I don't know, I guess. I mean, Swiss is what we were talking about,
Yeah.
but I don't know if there are other data
Yes, performance
collection
matters, they have to
tools.
enter.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So that's just in general, kind of, right?
So Swiss data does take time, and I'm sure if you were to ask a teacher, they would tell you they would want more time to be able to fill out all of these forms and to do it
Mhm.
accurately and to do it well, and I would agree with that. The rest of the data, the academic data, is built into our calendar.
Mhm.
So we will, when mostly Andrew put together that calendar with teachers and with us, but put that together, it's all mapped out for the year. And we know, so when the Bridges unit ends, there's a couple of days put on the calendar to do the Bridges assessment. And then there's time put in for the Dibbles assessment, for the STAR assessment. That's all built into our calendars and scheduled. And then our interventionists, our coaches, and we have some other folks that will, IT people that will lend support for those formal assessments as well.
Teachers could definitely use more time.
I think if you ask any teacher on the planet, the hottest commodity is time,
Yeah.
truly,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Am I
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm not- you're not.
There's not enough
Yeah.
time for anything.
And that's probably, I mean, under other circumstances, that's probably also true. But I
Yeah.
just wonder, the more of these reports that we ask for and the more of the things that
Sure.
I mean, they're all great, but
And the hope with
it
Swiss
has to
data
come from
is that,
somewhere.
that in the end, that will get them more time.
Mhm.
So if we can work together to get behaviors under control, and it's not magic, it doesn't always happen,
Right.
but that's the hope.
Last question going to Nikki.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback because I know I just asked for data and then you kind of went down a completely different path. And I think we have to take that into consideration in the discussion we just had in the budget regarding what is that acceptable amount of students per class? Because I think with the amount of budget and the amount of progress that we still need to make, we have to have data to be able to make effective decisions. So if we do, if the majority of the board does agree with the fact that we do want to see some of this data, then what is that acceptable number of students per class?
Okay. I'm ready to move on unless someone has a desperate need to ask a question. And everyone here has an email address. So if you have a question you haven't thought of or weren't able to ask, I'm sure they would be happy to, at their convenience, answer questions and deal with concerns. We have marine biology coming up as a new course proposal.
Right, we have, Robin, are you going to speak to this or is Angel?
You could start,
on,
and
or-
Angel's not able to get on.
Okay.
So if you want to start, or I can
Sure,
start.
I
and
can
then-
start and then you can jump in. So it's in your packet. It was sent out with the packet. This is another proposal coming out of the science department. You recall last month, there was an oceanography elective. This one is kind of like the bookend to that course. The understanding is that the science department is just trying to grow their offerings, especially for juniors and seniors who are looking for more. Am I right?
Yeah,
They're just
absolutely.
looking
It's
to
for
really have additional options.
Yeah,
in
upperclassmen.
Mhm.
It gives more flexibility, much for some students, very high engaging, and more choice in their path. And it does align nicely with the new credit requirements, and more the STEM, so they need 9 STEM. And this gives them more flexibility in what kind of science credits they may or may not want to take, but it is the upperclassmen.
Right, and this is also something that would not impact our current staffing. I believe I spoke to the department chair. It really just requires a biology cert. Most of our folks are certified in biology. So, it would help us with that rotation of what we're able to offer on any given year or in any given year.
That's great. With a pool and then they could do scuba class.
There you go.
Questions?
He's gonna hit it at every angle.
Questions for Robin or Sue or anyone about this course? Marine biology.
I think it's great for us. I think that's a good class.
Yes.
I noticed it says textbooks. Are those textbooks that are already approved and that we already have?
Probably not.
No, we would have to purchase, but.
Let me go back. The 3-page proposal. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I would have to go back and ask Angel, the department chair, which textbook she's referencing here. I didn't get the impression she was looking for a full-blown textbook adoption, though.
Questions? Any more questions about this course? We have another one to go. Capstone project.
Right, so the capstone project is the new state required, basically culminating project for our students. It's a graduation requirement. Juniors would be taking it, and then maybe there might be a few seniors that did not finish this year, because this year it's a completely different model. We don't have a teacher, and they're trying to do it during advisory. And it's super challenging. We do have a team of about 4 teachers right now going above and beyond, trying to look at projects and using their duty time to make it happen this year. It's been super challenging without a dedicated teacher to it. So it's really the kids being able to pursue their passion project. And that could range anywhere from almost like a Eagle project from a scout to somebody doing some community service, maybe going up to a nursing home and doing some volunteer work. So they get to choose whatever it is that they want to work on.
Right, and this is something that the superintendent put in her proposed budget, right, to add a position. So we would have a dedicated capstone teacher. So this would be a dedicated course, could be run 5 times a day, we wouldn't have, it wouldn't be I hate to use the terms hit or miss, but it's right now, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, the kids would also be presenting their projects, almost like a, kind of like a science fair event. And it's pretty exciting.
So if a student decided that her capstone project was going to be producing a play in the Warner Theater's black box, this coordinator would deal with the Warner Theater
Right.
to develop
Right.
and help develop it. and
Absolutely. And
evaluate and so on. So this person will be busy out of school as well.
could be,
as
yeah, a lot of work with
during the
community.
school day.
Yep. Yep, could be.
Okay.
Yep. And Ed Advance has helped us a lot this year as well. Not only do we have the team of teachers at the high school, but Ed Advance, we partnered with them and they help with the curriculum piece. And there's an online platform that is a kind of like a warehouse is not the right word, but it holds all of the kids' work and they have a folder and it's all online and they create their project using this platform.
Kind of like
hold
a
it.
SharePoint site?
What's that?
Like a SharePoint site?
Yeah,
where they-
kind of.
Everybody's
Well, they each individually have their
their
own
own folders.
project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
I think this is great, we're doing this.
Louder,
Mm-hmm.
please.
Great, we're doing this, it's really good for kids to
Mhm.
get all of these skills prior to leaving to go to college.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would hope to, some of this excitement, and if you really get the kids excited about their projects, will carry over into their other work.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I think it's so engaging. The kids tend to really love this, right? Because it's self-directed.
Yeah.
Other questions? No other questions. Next agenda item is, and so I think it was you
It was
asked
definitely-
last week, last
Last
meeting.
month, a couple
Last
months ago, I
month,
think,
yeah.
right?
Why do these things linger on this list? How do they get on and why do they linger? And I gave a very brief, and I'm still going to give a brief explanation tonight. It won't be long tonight either. But, for instance, it came up again, social promotion. Gary brought it up in the context of what we're hearing about the elementary grades. These are sort of ongoing concerns, things that keep coming up, and sometimes they get hot. Now, that Middletown faculty management issue started out in October with some complaints to the town and to the administration of the school system about the way some of the buildings were being, and the teachers being treated in some of the buildings that they were being administered. And that culture in the school system can be deadly, can be destructive, and can really get in the way of everyone's well-being. And that was at the time something we said, well, if we have time later, we'll take a look at. And just this last week, I think it was this past week, that the superintendent in Middletown resigned over an issue that is a reverberation of these problems. Now, it had to do more with public relations or certain people in the public, but the concerns started with this. So we may decide at some point, we have the time on the on the agenda of a particular month to do that, maybe in the summertime.
Okay.
So that's and homogeneous versus heterogeneous grouping also comes up, and it will come up more, I think, as we talk about actually developing a curriculum for the high school, for the new building and so on. And maybe being able to have a different facility and maybe a little bit different staffing abilities, and who knows, we may decide that we want more than 2 levels of classes for our students.
Yep.
So that, anyway, that's just the explanation. Anyone have anything to add to that or questions based on that?
There's also some topics that come up that need to be taken care of right away, and so something else is
It's just gonna get bumped.
it's just
and we're gonna-
bumped
yeah.
because it's not as important as this really.
Right,
needs to be
that part I
handled.
get. It just concerns me that we carry them but don't ever address them. So is it something just to keep in the back of our minds
Yes.
to watch
So
it?
we don't forget them, as Ellen
Right.
says, so we don't
Yeah.
forget them, because
Okay.
there's an importance to them. And when it's in the fullness of time, as the Bible says, in
Yeah.
the fullness of time, we will get to it.
Thank you, John.
Facilities realignment. Anything, we said that this committee would probably be dealing with whatever philosophical concerns there were, whereas facilities and et cetera, when we take a look at an inventory of the facilities, and has that started at all? Do we know anything about that?
They started.
Facilities,
John started, I think. but- Inventory.
So that's still, okay, so that'll be on the, maybe I'll move that to items for future. Speaking of that. Okay, next Next item is, it could be tricky depending on how you look at it or what you think when you look at it as an agenda item. This came up because we had a question a couple of months ago about, well, do we have exit interviews? This has come up before in other committees as well. And the answer is yes, we do. But it's a very tricky thing, the exit interview, because you want people to be honest. You want to get good answers. And Kim's going to explain all this a lot better than I will, but I'm going to take another minute or so. But you have to be very careful that you don't, because it's so powerful, that you don't scare people away from even giving an interview or giving an honest interview when you do. So you can't get in this forum, you can't get into details about what those exit interviews show, but I think Kim will talk about the overall use that an exit interview can be, and we have paperwork.
Yes, so you, in the, was handed out as a handout, I think. Just as a front and back page. And so what I gave for you is, I know particularly of concern to the board was the mid-year exits that we've had. So I shared at the top kind of our mid-year numbers. So really starting in November, we started to see some of our certified staff resigning in the middle of the year. So I went back to all the consent agendas to make sure that I had all the numbers. And so through March, we've had 11. And
Can I just interject for
Yeah.
1 second? The numbers that I pulled from the consent agenda don't match these numbers. And it's in the car. I can go get it if I need to, but I went back to September.
right, so September though had numbers from summer resignations that we just hadn't brought to the board yet. So
But they
so
still
those
were
were
resignations. That's
right,
what,
but we get a lot over the, like teachers change all the time.
right.
So, and we didn't even start doing exit interviews until November. So I really went to the mid-year ones because that really is the concern. So I did not include the September ones because those would have included our end of year ones that would have gone all the way back to our retirements at the end of the year. So there was a lot of people make decisions to shift throughout the year.
All right.
So I did not include September, October. I started in November.
But I think if we include September and October, and I understand that there were some summer resignations, there's still resignations, we wouldn't have a 97% retention rate.
We would, because we start with that September 1st date. So that's how we track retention. So they would have been included in last year's retention number. They wouldn't be included in this year's number because they didn't start the school year.
Okay.
So it still would be the same.
So I'll have to, I wish, I knew we were gonna talk, I forgot the paper on the car, but you can go on and
Right,
I'll.
because I think there was,
Supposed to be a very general
I was gonna say, if I
discussion.
remember the
But my
numbers, I
main
think it was 2
concern-
people in September, and those 2 people both resigned before we started the school year for students.
And
So,
I'm just-
yeah,
we shouldn't get to further identification of who might or might not be on this
Correct.
list anyway. because
That's
that
not
would
what I'm
be
looking for.
inappropriate.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that the difference in numbers is significant. Like I had 33 on the list, that I have, as opposed to 11.
Okay.
Well, it's a huge
We had
difference.
that point made, so Kim can go on with her presentation.
some people decline.
but this
Not
is the
exit-
actual
this is
resignation.
the-
Oh, okay.
Right, but I'm looking at just the numbers. So did you count them if they didn't do an exit interview?
Yes.
Okay, so
So
I
this
still have
is
33 as
right.
opposed to 11.
So you
I'm
know
just
what, why
putting
don't we
that out
look at
there.
that
Yeah,
next
let's
time,
listen to
just
it.
in the interest
Okay.
of, yeah.
So the number of exit interviews that were completed of those 11 people was 6. So not everybody chooses to complete the interview. And then I did a comparative analysis of other alliance districts and other districts that have a similar demographic to us, just so that you can see the comparative and you can see the other retention from those districts, just to kind of see where we are, that we are in line. And there was actually an interesting article in the Hartford Current on March 6th about this very issue, that we are in the Great Resignation right now. There are, the Bridgeport Teacher of the Year has chosen to leave teaching because of how difficult this year is and is leaving mid-year.
Yeah.
So this is a national issue for every single district in the country right now. But what I did for the 13 questions, so that you could see the questions that we ask, and they are all open-ended questions so that we can really get valid information. And I tried to group it into some very high-level answers so you could just see what people are saying. But to John's point, I do have a concern that if we are sharing this at a meeting of this nature, that teachers are going to decline to be forthcoming in these interviews. I've actually had 3 teachers decline just since we brought it forward to the board because of that. And they said that's the reason that they're declining to participate.
Which
So-
is fine, because we can't get anything substantive out of the actual exit interview. In looking at this, it's somewhat helpful, but I think what my intent was to raise awareness around the number of people that are leaving.
Yeah,
Right.
That's my intent.
And I think
And
that's
where I was
valid.
coming
And
from.
that's a very valid point, Sue, and you're right, and Kim's right. It's not unique to Torrington, right? It's happening all over the country. And honestly, I feel as though we're in a pretty good place. I feel that we haven't had a huge number, and the number that we have had, we've been able to fill.
I feel like we're looking at different data.
Okay.
We can go back and take a look at that for sure, but.
yeah.
No, we
but
will
it just-
definitely look at this again and bring it
Okay.
back again. but-
And I'll bring what I pulled from.
Yeah,
the
no, I'm happy to
numbers
look
too.
at that, because I did not go back to those dates.
It's
but-
collected to inform our decisions
Correct.
about many things. So the purpose that maybe you would have in wanting to know about exit interviews is very different from the purpose that the school system would have in running exit interviews.
Correct.
So-
Right.
And these are all very subjective responses too. You're getting people at a point in their lives where in many cases, they're highly stressed.
Correct.
They've
It's
had a bad
traumatic.
experience.
Mhm.
Or maybe something else is going on, has nothing to do with the school,
Mhm.
but that gets turned into these
Absolutely.
responses. So that's why they need to be analyzed by the people who
Absolutely.
worked with the teachers in question or the staff members in question.
Yep, and
Right.
what we
And I just
do.
have to say,
oh,
I just want to just shout out to Kim, and I know that you're not saying anything, Jeff, right? Kim and her team are doing an amazing job with this. This has been it's
Oh,
been
sure.
tough.
The
Yeah.
hiring that you had to go through
Yeah.
over the summer and how many positions were filled is incredible. And I know what goes into that. But it's just concerning the numbers that
Yep.
we've been seeing since September. Is
Yeah,
very
we're all
concerning.
concerned, and we'll take a closer look.
Okay, is this still true? But it used to be that 1 out of 3 teachers didn't make it to their 3rd year of teaching.
That is true.
Right?
That is
Yeah,
an
that
accurate number.
statistic still holds. Teaching is a very tough job, and it's not always what you think it is. Having sat as a docile student in your high school classes and then taken those deadly education courses in college,
Right.
you expect something very different from what you find when you're actually in front of a classroom full of 15-year-olds
Very much
or
so.
8-year-olds or 5-year-olds or 4-year-olds.
And then you layer on a global pandemic.
Yeah, right. And then you add everything else to it. You
Yeah.
add a community that's going through what Torrington's going through in so many ways.
Sure.
You know, the economic distress and things like that.
Mhm.
And the shift we've had up until the last couple of years in administration and how long we went without a good administrative team such as we have now. So, you know, these stresses reverberate too.
And what I can say for sure is that when we look at these exit interviews, I'm presenting this information to Sue and whatever applicable administrator might be involved. So if it's an ELL teacher, I might go to Joanne. If it's a special ed teacher, I might go to Laura, the special ed supervisor, or the principals, or whoever I need to talk to share the information so that we can try to impact what we've learned. And, we're working on that on a regular basis. And should anything come to light that we feel we need the support of the board for, we would definitely bring that forward in the applicable committee, whether it's a policy change or a budget change or the school improvement committee or wherever it needs to go, facilities tech. If that happens to be something that we could share with the board to get your support, then we can say, this is a pattern we've now seen in the exit interviews that this is something we need to look at.
Yeah, this is far more an administrative than a
Right.
Board of Education issue. But thank you, Kim, for
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you, Kim, for putting this together. We asked for this and asked for this, and this was what we asked for, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I do think it's helpful to some degree, because we just don't know. We just see the resignations and we don't have any clue what's going on. And, just looking at this quickly, I see it looks like several people have said that the workload wasn't manageable. More manageable workload would have kept you there longer, right? So, I mean, that is something that the board can maybe help with. That's when we do talk about smaller class sizes or things like that. That may have legitimately kept some of those people here. Because if you have 18 kids instead of 24, that just reduced your workload. So that is something we can help with. So I think that's really helpful, and I look forward to reading through the rest of this. Thank you.
This is not related, but thank you, Kim, but I have a concept of high school and that I want to make sure I get through. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
Thanks for speaking to the course proposals.
Anything else on this exit interview issue? Vicki, handled very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alumnus of the Year nomination, just to refresh our memories, everybody got the packet. I sent out the grid with the system we're going to use. If you will come in, committee members, if you will come in with some arrangement, 1 to 10, and of those people, half an hour before the next meeting, this will all go out in notice. But then we will sit down, and the first thing we'll do is just make the checkerboard and see who. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes we have to talk a lot. We'll see. But that's what's going to happen. So please be prepared for that. Okay. And if you have questions, just get back to me, telephone or system-wide focus areas, attendance, engaging in differentiated instruction, targeting student needs, which is so we don't lose track of this. Anything going on there we need to talk about?
Well, I think you heard quite a bit about this actually from Kelly and Peter.
We did.
Right, and from Andrew, so, yeah.
Those
Okay.
are good updates.
And the same thing is probably true of the delegated sick board goals, implementation district strategic plan. Still nothing from the city, so nothing we can integrate with the city. Yeah, we are monitoring and supporting the middle school, high school building committee. We are there at those meetings. Pathways, we again heard tonight, a couple of course proposals that particularly that marine biology one that would be part of a science pathway.
Yeah, definitely enhancement.
Yeah. And we heard again, support necessary to deal with educational impact, et cetera. That was probably 2/3 of what we heard tonight from the at the elementary level. And the same thing is going on, as we have heard off and on in various ways at the secondary level as well, unless someone has something to add to that. Anyone?
John, one thing, sorry,
Please.
I'm just gonna bring up again that on Monday, the 21st at 6:30 at City Hall, the city council is hearing the proposal regarding placing the skate park basically in front of the new building that's being built. So if anyone has any feelings on that one way or the other, that would be the meeting to attend.
Okay. And Park and Rec meeting in the first Wednesday of April, which of course conflicts with this meeting, with the SIC meeting. But there will be a couple times when this comes up and needs to be monitored. Website, LT social media updates. We had something handed out. Ally, do you want to?
So last 28 days, not too many things happened. 493 people viewed our Facebook page, 15 new people liked our page, posts reached 1,312 people, and in 50 types of engagement. One highlight is that we have Kids Marathon coming up in June, and 611 people viewed our little trailer that we put together. It is 2.5 minutes long. Should you wish to watch it?
I think didn't we show it to you? The trailer for the kids? I thought we did. I thought we
At
did.
some point.
Yeah.
We've seen.
All right, that's all we got.
Well, thank you. Tag update. Laura, I see you there. Laura?
Yeah, she's
Yep. Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yep, so really where we are at this point is our first group of students were identified, as I had mentioned previously, and they have begun to get their interventions at the 4 and 5 school. The principals have arranged the time for that to occur, so more information can come from them at this point. Also, as far as evaluations for next year, Andrew had purchased the test, the COGAT test for the 3rd grade. So what will happen now, Andrew, I don't know if you thought about when you want to do that yet, but
We're starting the week of March 28th, so in about a week and a half.
okay, great. So what will happen is this time, 3rd and 4th graders will be evaluated, and we will see who meets the criteria for that.
Questions for Laura? No questions for Laura.
I'm sorry. just have one.
Yeah.
Will all of the kids take that test?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so that's the difference. Remember when we first started talking about TAG, we didn't have a group administered. So what would happen is whenever a child has to be given an IQ test, you need to get individual permission, signed permission from a parent to do a test just on one child. So Well, most districts will do is they'll start with a group administered IQ measure, which is what we did with the COGAT. And then that's probably the biggest one used for gifted and talented. And then we have the other criteria, which is the input from the teachers, the district scores, class performance, et cetera, which also went into the mix. So this just makes it that we do not need permission. We did send a letter home telling the parents that all children at that grade level would be taking the assessment.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Fiona, you wanted to put some flesh on the liaison assignments.
Oh, yeah. So just, for the school liaison assignments, 'cause some people had questions on what exactly it entails. So really, it's just to have direct communication with the school, to share positive things that are happening in the school, events that are happening in the school, to basically just kind of get back to focusing on the child component of what we do, which I think sometimes when we're in that bigger picture, not that we lose sight of it, but our meetings don't really show all of the good things that are happening in the schools. So it's really the liaison's responsibility to kind of gather that good information and make the board aware of items that they may be interested in, like the Veterans Day parades or different events that are going on at the schools, like the middle school has the Aladdin play this weekend. So it's really just to put information out there also to the public of what's actually happening at our schools. So it's really to promote the good things happening at the school. Then we added the additional liaisons going forward. So we're going to have a PTO/community liaison, which is Sue. So Sue will work, with the PTOs to bring information back and forth, to hopefully open up that line of communication with parents through the PTOs. And this was, planned a couple months ago, but I think it's more appropriate right now with everything going on. But I think that'll be a good addition. Ed Corey is doing a government liaison. So he's looking at all the proposed bills for us and interpreting it and determining if there's anything that we should be of concern. There's several coming up right now. One regarding special education and the funding mechanism. That's very interesting. So he's looking into that, but we're also going on a call Thursday about that to get some more information. So I think that will be helpful in us not finding out about these laws after they can pass. And if we can do any lobbying efforts in advance, it will be good. John is at advance liaison, so he goes to their board meetings and brings back any information and opportunities to the board. Gary is going to be the building committee liaison to kind of help people understand the construction component of this build, because it's out of a lot of our understanding what, the specifics of that. So hopefully we can encompass all of these areas so that things can be done outside of our board meetings, right? And information brought back to the board.
Security liaison,
Security is just, yeah.
what does that mean?
You're gonna be there in
I
the
know it's
morning.
me, but I don't know what it means yet.
I didn't know what mine was.
So we're doing a lot of security endeavors through the security grant. And I think sometimes it's, difficult to have all of these discussions in public regarding specific security endeavors. So that way, like John can get information to Jess, and then it can be kind of brought down to a level that the public can be aware of regarding like the block warriors and that kind of stuff. We're having the new discipline deans being put in. So that all kind of encompasses school security. So it's just a way of not hiding things from the public, but there's not, some of those things can't be talked about in public. So it's a way that you can get information and then bring a report to the board, basically.
Questions about that?
Question.
No questions. I was thinking because Sue isn't here, we're meeting again in a couple of weeks anyway, the way the calendar has worked for us this month, so we will postpone that Alliance update. Yeah, I did skip over, and thank you, Sue, for reminding me. I skipped it, sort of on purpose. Topics for future meetings. We have our usual suspects. Anything else we want to?
Alums of the year.
Oh, along with the year, yes.
Possibly looking at some of the pathway curriculum.
Yeah.
Then it can get moved to budget. So, you know, taking like one at a time or however we want to handle it.
Anything else?
Sue Lebomsky just wanted to let you know she's here. She just has a tough time speaking.
Yeah,
You're-
she's on.
You're on screen.
She's on,
Okay.
yeah.
Hi, Sue. Love you, miss you. Get better, get better, get better. Anyone else? Okay. We are comment to the good. You're sitting through this meeting earns you the right to say whatever you want at this point. Start with Maureen.
Thank you to the elementary team. It was a really great report. A lot of good information.
Ditto, it was wonderful. Thank you. Great meeting.
Here.
It was a great meeting. I just hope everybody realizes that from Board of Ed standpoint, we're trying to get as much money as we can and invest it in the schools. And the other side of it is the results have to, pay for the investment. So, but this was good information, which I've never seen before. So hopefully we get it quite often.
Same, I think it's great information. It seems like you guys are treading in the right direction.
Justin,
Nothing else.
Ally.
Great meeting. It's still light out. It looks like spring, so.
Let's cancel the facilities meeting.
Wait till we go to daylight saving time year round. It'll be dark until 10 in the morning. Laura.
Yep, just enjoy the spring. Glad to have the windows open for a change.
Nikki.
All set, thank you.
Okay. Georgia,
I'm all set, thank you.
you're all set.
Thank you for the opportunity to present and the interest in what we're doing, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you, same, really. Thank you for the chance to be here to share this, the hard work we're doing. Sometimes it doesn't always come across in meetings, and it's great to have the chance to be able to share, what's really happening at the school level.
Oh,
Thank you. It's interesting to see what you guys are up to. So thanks.
I'd like to express all my gratitude to all the staff who are in the trenches doing all of this work, working with the students each and every day to realize our vision for student success. So they're doing phenomenal work as I join the classrooms, and couldn't be any more excited to be part of this work.
Great job, Torrington and Vogel, on the presentation. It was wonderful to see what you guys are doing. It was a great meeting.
Thank you for your presentations and look forward to seeing more data in the future. Thank you.
I wish we could present this kind of data at every SIC meeting. This is what we're most jazzed about. This is really what's important, right? So we'll have this added to the agenda, Mr. Kisco, anytime. So thank you, all of you folks at Torrington and Vogel and Andrew for being supportive of all that work. It was really wonderful. And thanks to Kim and her team for pulling all of that really interesting information together. And we'll keep fine tuning everything we're doing.
Nikki, did I skip you?
No.
I didn't skip Nikki. Okay. Fiona.
Just thank you guys for all that information. It's helpful to hear all that, and Kim for going through and putting all that together for us. Greatly appreciated.
Sandy.
Awesome.
Gary. John.
I was just curious why Peter always calls out the bad kid as the name Johnny. I mean, look over here. Too.
It's personal.
No such thing as
Marissa? No, Marissa never has anything to say. Anyway, thank you all very much. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those to whom it applies, and otherwise, meeting is over.